This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, John Rauda back with episode 35 of A Geek Leader. And today is very special. We have a guest with us. It's David Neal. Had a great talk with him. We talked about him going through the process of becoming a leader and how he was a reluctant leader and kind of switched back and forth from being interested in leadership and taking a management or leadership role and then not being interested and wanting to take a step back and just the process and the journey that he went through with that. He mentions a lot of good resources and I'll link up all of his contact information and stuff like that in the show notes. It's a really good episode. I hope you really enjoyed this talk with David Neal. All right, and we're live. I've got David Neal here, and I want to go ahead and just start out by having you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about how you got started into technology from the early days and kind of where you are now.
Hey, yeah, I'm David Neal. I go by Reverend Geek on the Twitters and other social media, and I got started in technology at a young age on the old TRS-80, followed by a Commodore 64. And didn't really realize at the time just how important technology and computers were to me, but I sure had fun on them. And then later in life, and especially in college, when I went down several different paths in college, and thought I wanted to be a musician at one time, or go into architecture. And the thing I discovered is that anytime I got to touch a computer is when I had the most fun. And it suddenly dawned on me one day, hey, I should take a programming class and see what that's like. And I did, and the rest is kind of history. So I got started in software at a software company, and later in a manufacturing company, and started doing web development. By the end of the 90s, I was doing web development. I've been a web developer ever since.
Yeah, and you focus mostly on what languages? JavaScript, .NET, or a little of everything?
A little of everything. I used to be a full Microsoft stack, full Microsoft fanboy. But in recent years, because I've been in web development for so long, I've started to really focus on just JavaScript. And a few years ago, I switched to using Node, and I love it. I mean, the changes that they've made to the JavaScript language, the improvements for things like async and await, and of course, plenty of frameworks to choose from. I really enjoy just being able to focus on the JavaScript language.
Now, you're a Microsoft MVP. What all is entailed in getting that title? Because that's a pretty prestigious thing that Microsoft offers, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm grateful to have that title. It's a very nice honor. There's lots of ways that you can be given a Microsoft MVP. It's usually about your contributions to the community. For a long time, I was involved in the .NET community, where I would go and speak at user groups. I helped run a .NET user group in Nashville for a few years, and I thought that would be what would give me the opportunity to get a Microsoft MVP award, but it never did. So I kind of, forgot about .NET for a while, forgot about Microsoft for a while, and focused on Node.js. And I was building a project at my previous company around a Visual Studio team services integration. It was Visual Studio Online at the time. And I built this Node.js API client for Visual Studio team services and decided to make it open source, and in the process was giving the Visual Studio team, the API team, a lot of feedback and helping them to fix some of their issues. And lo and behold, I was surprised one day to get an email saying that I was awarded MVP.
Oh, wow.
And it was because of that open source project. But since then, I've maintained the MVP award year after year. So it's something that's given for a year. And you have to keep earning it year after year. So the way I've kept earning it is just the amount of involvement that I have in the community, speaking about Node.js and different technologies and whatnot.
That's awesome. So I know we've met before at a conference, and we talked a little bit about. I've heard you speak about leadership, and you have this talk where you give about reluctant leadership, and I want to hear what are the roots behind that.
Yeah. So early in my career, I was kind of a jack of all trades. I did some amount of IT, network administration, database administration, a mix of a lot of things other than just programming. And I became pretty good at what I did. And I joined a company around 2000 and had a couple of really successful projects under my belt with them, and they decided to promote me to manager of a team. And I didn't know what to do with that. I had, in hindsight, what I should have done is, embraced it and, really dove into what would it take to be successful, to be a manager, and it would have been awesome if that company had provided me with, hey, we're promoting you to management, and here's some things we can do to support you in that role.
So if it's anything like when I got promoted to manager, it was basically, let's take this guy who's really good with technology and not good with people, and let's put him in charge of a bunch of people and away from the technology. That
is exactly right. And, the story that I give, and when I give this story at a talk is, I'm an introvert. I'm like extreme introvert. It's only through a lot of practice and things that I've been able to pretend that I'm an extrovert when I'm out at conferences and speaking. So me leaving my office to go and talk to other developers and ask them how they're, for status, or getting together from, being in charge of handling meetings and all that just wasn't in my nature at all. And I resented it. I did the bare minimum to get by, and at first opportunity, I found another job somewhere where I could just focus on doing the software. Unfortunately, that cycle kind of repeated itself several times, earlier in my career, where I would, rise in rank and be given more responsibilities and eventually be asked to lead a team or have some fancy title, and I didn't really want to have anything to do with it.
What do you think they saw in you that was giving them the opportunity to promote you, to help you rise in rank? Was it your diligence? Was it your coding? Was it a little bit of everything?
I speculate it was amount of on one hand is probably just my dependability. Mm-hmm. To continue to perform well and to do the tasks that were assigned to me, and that I had a good rapport with other people.
Yeah.
That I, even though I didn't aspire to leadership or a management position, I had good relationships with everyone. So I think people that I worked with thought well of me, and probably it may have contributed to saying, "Hey, we think David would be, good at doing this." I'm like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. So likability probably came into play some with that.
Yeah.
So after you've kind of taken a step back from leadership and you kept finding yourself going back and getting put back into leadership, you'd step back out and get put back
mm-hmm.
in. What made you decide to embrace it and to move forward with it?
So I took a real step back. I had worked at a startup company and started with them. I was employee number 4, and we grew the company to about 30 employees, and I was managing projects and so forth. But I was still just doing the bare minimum to get by, and I had a couple of people that worked with me that worked, reported to me that that left the company, and it really stung. And it was, I blamed myself for that, I didn't give them a good enough environment where they would be excited about working there and willing to stay. And, I wasn't doing a good job of managing the work and managing the expectations and all those kinds of things. So I left that startup after 5 years to go work as just a heads down engineer, and it was refreshing, and it gave me a few years to just reflect and focus on the craft of software again. At the end of that, I was like, you know what? I really need to consider, at this point in my career and the age that I'm getting to, whether or not I really want to pursue being a leader or a manager or have one of those kinds of roles. So the next opportunity I had, I joined another startup company and was director of software development at that company. And it remained a small company, so I didn't have a whole lot of, experience or have a whole lot of people reporting to me. But it gave me an opportunity to really think about, well, what does it mean to take responsibility? And what should I do, even in the small environment, to really be more mature about taking responsibility and being a person in this type of position? And so it made me to start thinking about strategically what are the things I could do to help the people around me be more successful, and I think I did a fairly adequate job. I still wasn't investing in myself. I think that's the key thing, is I never embraced it to the point where I was investing a lot of time into like reading books on leadership or reading books on project management. I did a little bit of that, but not nearly enough. I wasn't pursuing it with the same, excitement and diligence as I was, pursuing the craft of building software.
So how would you go about doing that now? Like if you wanted to invest in, let's say I'm a growing leader and I've got a small team that I manage, and I want to invest in myself the way that I need to. How would I go about doing that?
Well, it's very similar to whatever career that you're in right now. Mm-hmm. So as a developer, there's courses and YouTube videos and books you can buy and blog posts you can read to, understand your craft better. And there's all that and more for management and leadership too. My current stance on leadership specifically is that you can be a leader wherever you are, no matter what job title you have, or if anyone reports to you or not. Yeah, so I think there needs to be a clear distinction between management and leadership. If you're a manager, there needs to be some qualities of leadership that you have, some skills that you can learn to be a better manager. But to be a leader, you can do those kinds of things in your organization no matter where you are. So there's some good books out there. I think there's like 360 Leadership or Leadership 360, one of those titles. Lead from Where You Are, Extreme Ownership.
Oh, that's a really good one. That's Jocko Willink's book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's I've started to actually do some research and do some reading on the subject, to prepare myself for some future role again. And so I've really been enjoying learning about leadership and qualities of it and things that I can do to improve myself.
So I've heard you speak once before about imposter syndrome, and do you think that played a role in wanting to step back away from leadership?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I have suffered at the hands of imposter syndrome a lot in my career, where I haven't been, I've been successful, but a lot of times I've discredited my own success, or, found, didn't really internalize the success that I had, so I kept thinking, well, there's plenty of people who are a lot smarter than me, who are a lot better at this than I am. And I don't have any right to, stand in front of anyone else to say this is how you do this, or this is what you need to do. In the realm of public speaking, I started speaking around 2010, 2011, and I struggle with imposter syndrome a lot, where it's like, what gives me the right to stand in front of an audience and tell them about some technology or something when I'm sure just about everyone in the audience is going to know more about this subject than I do, or they have a more knowledge, so it took a while for me to realize, hey, I can tell my story, and my story is unique. My experience is different from other people's experiences, and I can still provide value and information to folks, regardless of my level of experience. And I think imposter syndrome, is this deal, that does affect folks that feel like, I don't have the confidence or the qualifications to do what I've been asked to do.
Yeah, I mean, I still suffer from that today. I always have this vision of someday somebody, probably from HR, is going to walk into my office with a clipboard. They're going to be like, "Look, you don't have all the skills that we need, and it's all up, and the gig is up." And I'm like,
Yeah.
I always have that feeling that it's about to happen.
I've been found out. Yep.
So this is going to be really random, but you mentioned that you started speaking in 2011. Any chance you were at DevLink in 2011? I think I gave my first leadership talk in DevLink in 2011.
Yes, I definitely spoke at DevLink in 2011.
Wow, small world. So when you are dealing with imposter syndrome and trying to get past it, one of the things that's helped me is I always just give myself kind of self-talk of like, yes, maybe I don't deserve all that I've been given, but I have it and I can move forward and I can go with it. What helps you kind of get past that thought?
Well, I remind myself that, as I said before, that my experiences are different from other people's experiences, that I've had enough feedback now from folks that appreciate the things that I've done and the contributions that I've made, that I can start to at least reflect on those and be encouraged that, hey, I can, I still make mistakes, I can still mess up, but overall I'm still making a positive impact on other people, and so I should continue pushing forward and pushing myself to get better at making other people feel awesome. And that's what it boils down to, is that I feel like, part of my purpose here on earth is to equip other people and to encourage them and to help other people become more awesome. I adopted this catchphrase, I guess, from several years ago. I end all my talks with, "You don't need permission to be awesome." Mm-hmm. And I've got stickers of it, and I give it to people. And I want to have an impact on other people and be, even in some small way, help to encourage them to, or inspire them to go and do bigger and better things.
Yeah, that's good. When you are inspiring people and trying to get people to be more awesome, how does gratitude play into effect with that? I know you mentioned before about just telling people how you're thankful for them and the things that they've done, and bring that to their attention.
Yeah. So one of the things I talk about in like the leadership talk that I give is the power that you have over encouraging other folks. And the realization I had was maybe about a year ago. We had several really good people that left the company I was at, and it got me thinking. Well, when good people leave, you put on you give them a going away party. You speak highly of them. You talk about the awesome things that they've done that have impacted you and it impacted the company, and you wish them well and you send them off. And I got to thinking, well, why don't we do that more often? Why don't we do that? Say those kinds of things all the time. Mm-hmm. And if we did, I think we would have a big impact on people, and they would be happier about the work that they're doing and be encouraged, and then it helped to reinforce the good things that they were doing, and they would want to do more of that. So I think it's really important to recognize people around you that have had an impact on you, and being, like you said, one way of looking at that is gratitude, being grateful for the things that other people have done, and to express that. So to express your gratitude would be to, let that person know, hey, that thing you did was really awesome, or when you did this is how it made me feel, or I really appreciate the work that you do, or appreciate your attitude and your willingness to help. There's all different ways that you can express that.
Yeah, I know sometimes it's hard to actually verbalize the words that you need to say when you're talking to people, especially if you're introverted, and it's sometimes it can be difficult.
Absolutely. And again, I'm not only introverted, but I come from a family history of folks who, never said much encouraging, didn't say many encouraging words and so forth. And so for most of my adult life, I didn't know how to give encouragement. I didn't know how to go to someone and, offer anything but criticism. It's like if they were doing something good, I would say nothing. But if they did something bad, it's like, oh, I know how to talk to them about that.
Yeah, in my family we call that tough love, and that was, it's just one of those things where you don't hear the good things, you only hear the things that you need to fix, and that can get challenging. So, have you ever? How does having encouragement and encouraging people work when you're trying to deal with a difficult team member or dealing with conflict in a team? Is there a way that can play in?
Sure. And one thing I've learned about conflict resolution, I think, has really been an eye-opener for me, is, and I've heard something similar to this, like in marriage seminars, where, that person, your spouse or your coworker, they're not your enemy. They're not, there might be some bad stuff going on, but that person is still a person and deserves respect and deserves, to be treated fairly and treated in the way that you would want to be treated yourself. And so in conflict resolution and dealing with a tough situation, it's better to frame it that the problem is, somewhere else. It's like, we are here and we are a team, and this is the problem. Let's face the problem, and let's come up with a solution together on how to fix that problem over there, instead of facing each other and attacking one another.
Yeah, I guess kind of understanding that you're both trying to get to the same goal,
right?
And trying to work together. It's a challenging thing, when you deal with that conflict from time to time. But that's a great way of putting it. The person's not trying to attack me; they're not against me. We're actually trying to move forward together.
Yeah, one thing we talked about in my previous company is, like, give people the benefit of the doubt. It's like sometimes it feels like they're attacking you personally, or you can feel like, it's a personal thing against you. And, people make mistakes. Maybe it actually is. Maybe someone actually is attacking you. But if you really think about it, what's their motivation? What's causing them to act the way that they do? There's usually a deeper or something else that is causing the situation that you can maybe get to the root of, that'll help turn in the direction of the conflict, and like you say, work towards a common goal.
Yeah, that's good. I had a strange question. I was looking at your website, kind of scanning through it, and it says that you punch bears. So what is that about? Do you actually punch bears?
So this is something that I helped come up with and reinforce at my previous company. It was a metaphor of punching bears is like, doing hard things, going up against adversity, and we would talk about punching above our weight, like going up against competition and going against, those in the industry that were much bigger than us, had been in the industry longer, and being disruptive, from a startup standpoint, but also, really being scrappy. And so I joke about that, that we used to say that all the time, like go out there and punch some bears today, and go be awesome.
Yeah. And
I joke now that it's like, you probably in real life don't want to go around punching bears.
Yeah, I would advise against that. So basically you're talking about just going out and doing something difficult, being brave and challenging, the status quo.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some skills that you think are necessary for someone to become a good leader? And kind of just to wrap that up, what are the key things that you think are important when it comes to just managing a good team, being a good leader, and leading from any level? You mentioned, that you don't have to be a manager; you can lead without a title. So, how do you go about doing that? What are some skills or some key things that people need?
I think the heart of leadership is a servant attitude.
Okay.
And you can see books about servant leadership or see things about servant leadership written, and I think those are it's almost redundant. That if you want to be a true leader, you are a person who cares deeply about the people around you and want to see everyone succeed, and so you are giving yourself in a way that you're helping other people around you be more successful. The humility, thinking, more about the, less of yourself and, more about other people around you. I think that's the key place to start. Is having that attitude that you're with the team. You are, you're not, the classic picture of the guy standing in the back with the whip. That's not a leader. That's it's a dictator.
Yeah.
And a leader is out front, pulling the rest of the team along.
Yeah, the way you describe that really reminds me of the title of Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last. And it's one of those things where you've got to make sure your team is fed first, have that servant attitude, and then get what's left.
Yeah. So I think it starts with the heart of leadership being that, and then there's just a number of skills and things that you can learn. Just like we were talking about gratitude and encouragement. Those are things that may not come natural, but they are things that you can develop as, skills. Being able to understand people's personalities. Like There's plenty of personality assessments out there that can provide insight into not only yourself but the other people that you work with, so that this person, they're the way they like to receive information, the way they like to communicate, being able to articulate to other people, these are the best ways you can communicate with me, or this is how I like to operate. Those can be really insightful and help to understand, to gain empathy with the people that you work with. There's also another great book that I recommend called The Strengths Finder. It's a assessment, kind of like a personality assessment, but the goal is to identify your 5 top strengths and how important that is to focus on your strengths. And so when you understand the strengths of the people that you work with, you can, start to identify, well, if we just tweak the team dynamic a little bit here, or assign them to this thing here, we can, harness a lot more creativity and energy and momentum, by catering to people's strengths and what they really, really want to do.
Yeah, that's a good book. I remember at my last job, all the managers had to go through and do our Strength Finders assessment test online and figure out what that was. I think it was by Tom Rath. I'll have to double check. I'll link that up in the show notes as well.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But yeah, that was a really good book. I remember going through that. It's also what's really good about that is you can kind of see what you're good at too, because I didn't really know what my strengths were until I went through that. But it's also helpful to see what my peers' strengths are too, and kind of how we're related, how we're different. And I think that helps with communication as much as anything else.
Yeah.
So is there any last words that you want to leave the audience with, or anything that you want to talk about? What's next for David Neal? What's upcoming? Where can people find you? All those things.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I'm Reverend Geek everything. So that's my brand. ReverendGeek.com is my website. Reverend Geek on Twitter and Instagram. So outside of programming, I've got a number of hobbies. One of them is drawing. So that's a fun thing that I do I draw the slides for my talks and draw a bunch of silly illustrations for, and post them on Instagram and Twitter. So I've gotten a fair size following of folks just because of the talks that I give. I've given some keynotes this year, which is, man, I'm so honored to have been considered worthy enough to do like some closing keynotes. I've got another keynote coming up later this year at that conference. I don't know that it's been announced yet, but I'm really excited about that one because that conference, which the silly name, has a real family oriented aspect to it. So, attendees of the conference are encouraged to bring their families with them because there's a whole family track of things for kids, as well as an indoor water park and all the kind of fun things that they can do at that conference.
So, okay, I'm going to go way off on a tangent now. I know we're wrapping up, but you mentioned family, and I'm very family oriented. I'm a father. I've got 3 kids, and that's one of the reasons I got into really focusing on leadership is because I want to make sure my kids have whenever they have a job, I want to inspire as many people to be good leaders so that they have good bosses. I've worked for some doozies of bosses in the past, and I've got some great ones now, but I want to make sure that they have that opportunity to work for a good boss. So tell me a little bit about how your career and how you're trying to encourage people involves your family. Are you on a similar track the way that I'm thinking?
Yeah. So a number of years ago, I went through this thing called men's fraternity.
Uh-huh.
And it was through my church, and it was a 24-week thing. It was this thing on authentic manhood, and I think that was one of one of the key things in my life that set me on a path of getting over some of my hangups as a man, and to really put me in a right perspective of what impact I can have on my family, on my sons and the men around me, and and to be more purposeful in the things that I do. I highly recommend going through a series like that.
It's called Men's Fraternity.
Men's Fraternity.
Okay.
So yeah, when I have 4 older sons now, they've all graduated and I have one younger son who still lives at home, and so yeah, I want them to see in me an example of what leadership is and what integrity means, and I want to inspire them to to pursue those things for themselves as they start their families and they start their careers, to at least learn from me or picked up on some things that I've tried to demonstrate. I'm really excited that my youngest son, he just turned 13. He's going to be giving a workshop at that conference on building paper airplanes. So he's going to be teaching other kids about how to build airplanes, and they're going to do a contest. And I'm more excited for him than I am for myself.
That's awesome. That's great. Is he nervous? I know I'd be terrified if I was 13 giving a talk. Well,
he probably should be, but we've been homeschooling for a long time, and the homeschool co-op that we're a part of for the last 3 years now has involved him giving some kind of 5-minute presentation, every week. And so he already has a lot of experience getting up in front of an audience and telling them about, some subject or something that he did. And so that has made a big difference on his confidence and the ability to get up in front of a group of his peers and say, hey, I want to tell you about this thing.
That's great. That's going to be super beneficial when he gets out in college or is interviewing for jobs. I mean, I'll never forget the first talk that I gave, or the first time I spoke really publicly wasn't giving a talk, it was teaching. I got asked to teach an adjunct introduction to computer science course. And I had never really spoken in front of a group before. And just, my cocky young self, I said, sure, no problem, I can handle that. And then about a day before, all the thoughts came flooding through my head of fear of what's going to happen when I get up there. My zipper's going to be down. Someone's going to ask me some dumb question that I don't know the answer to, and I'm going to say something wrong. And there's going to be a reporter for the paper in there that's going to write a story, and I'm going to get fired. I mean, all these thoughts came flooding through my head. It was horrible. So that's great. He's getting that experience. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, just to wrap it up, you're at Reverend Geek and reverendgeek.com, and that's your brand everywhere, Instagram, Twitter. Anything else that you want to leave the folks with?
Like I leave all of my talks, you don't need permission to be awesome. Get out there and make an impact on your workplace and your family, and if you're in technology, you have an incredible opportunity to impact the entire world.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much for being with us.
You are welcome.